guys, my name's Carly and I'm here to talk about the Bible. There's something that I read today that I think is super relevant and I kind of want to bring to light because I feel like it is resting on my heart. So I am starting off in Daniel 3, and for those of you who don't know the backstory, briefly, there is about 4 men, I believe, and they work for a king, and Daniel's one of them, along with 3 others that I cannot pronounce their names. So they're being asked to worship a gold statue, and they are Jewish, so they believe in God, and they don't really want to do this because it's breaking a 10 commandment that they don't want to break. They don't want to worship other statues. Based on the circumstances, they choose to be faithful instead of choose to kind of bend into what the circumstance is asking them to do. And I think that's really relevant to today because how many times are we put into situations where we, are kind of getting our faith tested with and played with here, and we could choose to go in the right path, or we can choose to, not go along and not stay faithful and just kind of go down another way. So we get in these circumstances and your faith is being put to the test. Which way are you going to choose? And these men knew that, there was something that was probably going to happen if they did not choose to worship this statue, but they chose to be faithful to God anyway. And I think that's so important because this whole coronavirus pandemic is making a lot of people anxious, worried. The topic of death is being brought up because there's a lot of people that are dying. And it's really sad because no one wants to think about that. That's not a happy thing to think about. But you have to realize that, okay, you know what? No matter what the circumstance is, I'm going to choose to be faithful because God can provide you with some peace that no one else could provide you, not just anything in the world could provide. Like, it's a sense of peace that only God can give you. And that's a gift. It's truly a spiritual gift. So if we choose to go into the right path and stay faithful, that can happen. So I'm just going to read a few scripture to kind of illustrate this story a little bit. So like I said, we're starting off and the 3 of them were told to worship. They chose not to. So they are being put in a furnace of blazing fire. And this fire is so hot, like it's unbelievably hot. They turned it up even more than normal because they were going to put these people in there. So the king asked, "Is it true that you don't serve my gods or worship the gold statue I have set up? Now, if you're ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, drum, and every kind of music, fall down and worship the statue I made. But if you don't worship it, you will immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God that can rescue you from my power?" He is doubting their faith. So the men replied, "We don't need to give you an answer to this question. If the God we serve exists, then he can rescue us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he can rescue us from the power of you, the king. But even if he does not rescue us, we want you, as king, to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the gold statue you set up." So then the king got really mad. He was full of rage, it says, and he gave orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than was customary. And he commanded some of the best soldiers in his army to tie up the men and throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So these men in their trousers, robes, head coverings, and other clothes were tied up and thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. Since the king's command was so urgent and the furnace was extremely hot, the raging flames killed those men who carried the men up. So it didn't kill the men that we're talking about who, are Jewish. It killed the other men because that's how hot it was. And these 3 men fell bound into the furnace of blazing fire. So now they're into the furnace of blazing fire. And something that really caught my eye in here is that they basically say, listen, but even if he doesn't provide, we are still going to stay faithful to him. And I think that's the most amazing thing, and we can learn so much from these men and how strong they were in their faith, because even though the circumstance was all against them, they were like, okay, well, either I choose death or I choose to be faithful. They chose to be faithful anyway, and they chose to believe that, God's good, and this circumstance is not going to rock my faith. Because we get put into so many circumstances and so many times that people kind of make you, pick this way or that way. And people are going to try to peer pressure you, try to get you into other things that you don't really want to do. So instead of being like, I'm in a really big situation, I don't really know how to handle it, just breathe and be like, no, I have a path, okay? And I'm going to choose the one that stays faithful to God. Whatever that looks like, you have to choose it, no matter what. They go to check on the men because, they probably should be burnt up by this time. He exclaimed, "Look, I see 4 men, not tied, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th one looks like the Son of God." The king approached the door of the furnace of blazing fire and called the men and said, "Your servants of the Most High God, come out." So the men came out of the fire. They had nothing, no effect on them. The fire had basically nothing on them. The bodies of these men, not a hair of their heads was singed, and their ropes were unaffected, and there was no smell of fire on them. They were basically untouched. So they said, praise be the God of them. Like, the king is like, whoa. He sent his angel and rescued his servants who trusted him. They violated the king's command and risked their lives rather than serve or worship any other god except their own. And this is amazing because there's so many things we can learn from it. So now that we know the whole story, this was in my Bible and I literally love it. It says, God doesn't promise to save us from the flames, but he has promised to be with us as we walk through the fire. And that's such a true thing because we technically were not promised a life free of worries. And there's so many times in the Bible it says that you are going to be tried, like things are going to happen. You're going to be tested. These things are all in the Bible, and it talks a lot about how even though you're tested, these are actually good things because it makes your faith stronger. And I think this is a perfect example. And they were like, listen, we're not going to let the circumstance change how we actually feel about God. We're not going to let that happen. And so many times, even with this pandemic, we want to freak out. We are anxious and we're worried, and that's completely normal. But trusting in God and just staying faithful to him, faithful to his word, because it's the truth. And we just dive into the truth right now, and we can stay faithful even though we are anxious and there's these things that are like making us test our faith. That's a circumstance. Okay, do we be worried or do we trust God? We can be faithful, or we can always choose that other path, and that other path isn't going to lead you to the path that faith leads you to. When the day comes when we are tested, we can bravely go into the fire and know that whether we live or die, we serve a God like no other God who saves. And even if he doesn't save me in this world, I will still be faithful and never lose hope. That is what you need to pray for. Pray that no matter what the circumstances, no matter what you're getting tested about, that you are going to stay faithful. In the midst of the unknown, we must stay faithful and know that he is good, loves us, and know that he has plans that we don't know about. And we need to just trust him. This is what I wrote down, so I'm just going to read what I wrote. Okay, God, you know what you're doing. No matter the outcome, I still love you and have faith in you. We can't base our love of him off of circumstances. That's like, okay, well, maybe God, if you give me a boyfriend right now, then I'll love you and I'll stay faithful to you. But if you don't give that to me right now, I'm not staying faithful to you. I'm not going to obey you. I'm going to break every commandment I want to break because you didn't do this for me. That's a circumstance, and we can't do that on God. We can't put those on him because that's just unfair. Jesus got nailed to the cross for you and me to be here. And that is something worth having faith for always. That can always be something that if you're getting tested, you're in a situation, think about it. What did Jesus do for you? He loves you. He will never leave you. He's always going to be with you. He died for you. And these are things that can make you, okay, I'm not going to choose to go down that path. I'm going to choose to stay faithful, no matter what that looks like. No matter if people judge me, if people hate on me, because they hated him first. No matter what the circumstance is, we have to choose to be faithful. And choosing to be faithful is going to reward us with spiritual gifts. We're going to get peace. We're going to get happiness, joy. We're going to be blessed with so many things. And we already are blessed anyway, as long as we stay faithful. I hope that this encourages you guys to stay in your faith, choose to go down this lane, and don't choose to go the other way, no matter what the circumstance is, no matter who's testing you, what peer pressure you're being pressured into. The devil is presenting to you if he's trying to present you to be anxious, to be worried, to devalue yourself, to compare yourself. You get to choose right then and there. Am I going to go along and just block out the truth? Because we know the truth. So we just have to say no. In this moment, I'm being tested. This is a test. Bring me the test because I'm going to pass. I'm going to stay faithful and I'm going to continue down this path. I know my worth. I know how amazing I am because God made me. I know all these things. I'm not going to listen to evil. And going down that faithful path, we will be saved. And God will bless us in ways that we have no idea. He's always waiting to bless you. He's always loving you, and he always will love you. So thank you, friends, for watching this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it.